assignments and other human rights protection systems. And on the first optional protocol, the committee has sought to work in task forces, carrying out an analysis of repetitive cases and discontinued cases. We also have a proposal on progress in the use of technology. My colleagues who will be taking the floor will be giving more details on these and other topics. I mentioned them briefly, however, to show that the committee is not only making its own proposals on working methods, but it's also receptive, since some of these changes were taken up as suggestions from previous meetings like the one we're having today. I know that when you hear me speaking of mechanisms, harmonization, or development of working methods, it seems a bit odd in the context of the liquidity crisis that you're fully aware of, and which of course could affect the ongoing work, but our committee is very aware of its mandate. In the past, during the pandemic, we were able to rise above the situation. We did not stop work for a single day. So I want to assure you that given the current situation, we're looking at options to carry out the responsibilities we have taken on with the secretariat team that we have, seeking the least possible impact on the protection of human rights. An example of this is the predicted calendar adopted since 2019. Its effective implementation was delayed because of the pandemic. However, the committee is very encouraged by the high number of reports presented by states parties, some of those after a number of years of backlog. This is a clear indication, or at least we see it this way, of the commitment of states parties to implement effectively the rights in the covenant and ensure the fulfillment of their obligations on reporting. I should emphasize that the treaty body systems gives an objective, non-politicized assessment of human rights matters with guidance and technical support to states for the application of reports on reforms in human rights. The dialogues between the committee and states parties are a pillar of the United Nations human rights system. I would like, therefore, warmly to thank many states for the democratic exercise of dialogues. We have seen that for many, the greatest progress in terms of their close work with the committee is evaluating their own situation in connection with the covenant. Supported by the concluding observations, this has led to very positive results. We have also seen that on occasions, early detection of situations that run counter to the ICCPR can avoid larger conflicts. We don't always manage to do that, but it is at times possible to dialogue and avoid a spiraling of conflicts. And this is when we really see the purpose of the system's operation. In this situation of financial crisis, I would like to draw your attention to the care to be taken in decision making. We're concerned at the multilingualism situation. A colleague was reflecting on the fact that sadly she has never been able to speak in her own language, although it is an official language of the United Nations. The committee has always supported a position of principle in this matter, not only on dialogue, but also in the development of documents. We've always tried to ensure that the system was accessible and in line with the geographical balance. However, we're aware that we cannot uphold this position alone for much longer. As we make progress in strengthening the treaty body's system, we are aware that the financial situation remains difficult. However, I want to point to our determination in terms of fulfilling our mandate on the understanding that the treaty bodies system is a professional, non-politicized platform to protect and promote human rights. Its importance, relevance, and necessity have never been greater. We're here to give you an update on our work, and at the same time, we want to hear from you about the usefulness of our work. We want to know how we can do things better. I've already mentioned how we use your comments in our working methods, and I would like to know what suggestions you have for implementation of recommendations and the importance of this work in your various countries. The committee, as it stands, is facing challenges, huge challenges, but we are resilient. And we have the opportunity, we know, to be part of the various solutions that we hope we can identify together with you. Thank you very much. And I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Santos Pais, Vice Chair of the committee, to give an update on the work of the committee under its reporting procedure. Mr. Santos Pais.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be dealing with reporting and simplified reporting procedure of the Human Rights Committee, just to give you an overview of the work that we have been undertaking so far in this regard. As you know, Resolution 68 to 68 of April 2014 recognizes the importance of continued efforts to improve the efficiency of the working methods of the Human Rights Treaty body system. It encouraged the human rights treaty bodies to continue to enhance their efforts towards achieving greater efficiency, transparency, effectiveness, and harmonization through their working methods within their respective mandates, and to continue to review good practices regarding the application of rules of procedure and working methods in their ongoing efforts towards strengthening and enhancing their effective functioning. It further encouraged the human rights treaty bodies with a view to accelerating the harmonization of the treaty body system to continue to enhance the role of their chairs in relation to procedural matters, including with respect to formulating conclusions on issues related to working matters and procedural matters, generalizing good practices and methodologies, ensuring coherence and standardization. The chairs of human rights treaty bodies at the 31st meeting held in New York in June 2019 produced a position paper outlining a number of proposals aimed at harmonizing the treaty bodies' procedures and working methods. Following such meeting, the Human Rights Committee adopted its own position paper on the way forward in 2021. The proposals contained in that paper mainly coincided with those in the chair's joint position paper and had much in common with a non-paper on the 2020 review submitted by the Permanent Mission of Costa Rica in June 2019 on behalf of some 44 states, so-called co-facilitators. In the context of the treaty bodies treating process, at their 34th annual meeting held in New York in May and June 2022, the chairs of human rights treaty bodies arrived at a unified position on three key issues, namely the particular review cycle, the harmonization of working methods, and the digital shift. Beginning with the simplified reporting procedure, in 2009, the Human Rights Committee decided to adopt this simplified reporting procedures for states to use for submitting their periodic reports. And in July 2018, the committee decided to have the simplified reporting procedure becoming a permanent procedure of the committee. And the following year, the committee decided to move in 2020 to an 8-year predictable review cycle, shift from an opt-in model of simplified reporting procedure to an opt-out model, introduce a simplified reporting procedure for initial reports, and continue efforts to align its methods of work and the list of issues it produces with other treaty bodies. Most of the state parties to the covenant accepted the new simplified reporting procedure as the new regular procedure. Only 8 states opted out of this procedure and so continue to produce their reports under the standard reporting procedure. Regarding the 8-year predictable review cycle, the committee decided to move in 2020 to this cycle in order to review all state parties, including non-reporting and late reporting state parties. The 1 and 73 state parties were divided into 8 groups, and each state party reviewed on the basis of its reporting schedule, or in the case of late or non-reporting state parties, the length of delay in reporting. 2 years before being reviewed, the state party will receive a list of issues prior to reporting. A year before the review, or would be expected to submit a report, the state party is expected to reply to the list of issues, and 2 years after the review will provide follow-up information on the implementation of 3 priority recommendations from the concluding observations. The follow-up reports will make it possible to space out the reviews every 8 years, thus reducing the reporting burden. The committee has successfully engaged with long overdue state parties through the standard reporting procedure or at the last resort through the list of issues in the absence of the report. In the latter case, in light of detailed written replies to the committee's list of issues and the constructive dialogue that the committee held with state parties' delegations, the committee considered the written replies as the state party's initial periodic report. Specific examples can be given. For initial report, Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, Eswatini, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and for second reports, Gambia and Nigeria. In case of non-reporting or late reporting states, review will still be conducted if need be of the state party, either in the absence of report or in exceptional cases in the absence of a delegation. The committee may accept justified requests for postponements within the same calendar year, 2 postponements at the most, and then proceed to the review in the absence of delegation if need be. The committee favors, of course, in-person dialogues, but may accept under specific circumstances to conduct hybrid or online reviews, as we did during COVID-19. And we adopted for that effect a methodology for online dialogues to be conducted after 2021. I should, however, highlight the fact that hybrid meetings are an important element for the engagement with certain state parties, for instance, less developed countries, and particularly also with civil society. Coming now to the harmonization of the format of lists of issues. This format has been harmonized. Guidelines for drafting of list of issues and list of issues prior to reporting were adopted in March 2020, providing guidance on the format in terms of length, structure, style, and formulation, as well as content in terms of priority issues. In line with these internal guidelines, the committee decided that normally lists of issues should not include issues that have been raised with the state party by another treaty body in the last 2 years, unless there is a reason specific to the covenant to raise these issues, that they are scheduled for review by another treaty body within 1 year of the review of the state party. The committee also decided that lists of issues should not exceed 25 issues, save in exceptional cases justifying a list of not more than 30 issues. And as a general rule, each issue should contain a maximum of 3 questions. We now currently conduct between 7 and 8 review of state parties per session, and we prepare between 5 and 6 list of issues on each session. We, as the chair referred to, at Hable, were forced not to begin the predictable review cycle in 2020 till 27 because of COVID-19, it's now from 21 to 28. And each year, state parties will know for the 3 sessions of the year which state parties will come before us and on which dates. They and civil society as well, so they provide all the information they need for the review of the state party. Coming now to the structure of concluding observations. In this regard, we also adopted a common structure, and this includes a recommendation requesting wide dissemination of the concluding observations, as well as a paragraph requesting additional information to be provided to committee within a specified deadline, usually 1 year, on specific points of concluding observations. And the concluding observations also set out the provisional date when the state party's next periodic report is due. The committee has further adopted guidelines on the follow-up reviews to state party reports in 2021. A special rapporteur and a deputy special rapporteur are entrusted with the participation of the Secretariat to prepare follow-up reports for adoption by the committee in the scale of 3 reports per year. And these reports have a specific structure laid down in the guidelines. Implementation of follow-up recommendations are to take place within 3 years, assessed in the course of the 4th year. The guidelines also cover the format to be used by state parties and other stakeholders to inform the committee about the follow-up of the recommendations, and include the criteria used for monitoring the implementation of these recommendations. Recommendations targeted for follow-up need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, serious, urgent, and or protective, and implementable within the relevant time frame. One of the questions that have been raised in previous dialogues with state parties was interaction with other treaty bodies and regional courts. So that, in that regard, the committee appointed among its members focal points to each treaty body of the United Nations, and the same happened with the African, European, and Inter-American human rights systems. As conclusions on this part, as you can see, we spare no time and no efforts to bring the work of this committee in line with Resolution 68 to 68, the Chair's common vision, and the concerns raised by different stakeholders. We will continue the same efforts in the future in spite of the current crisis the UN human rights system is facing. We hope other stakeholders will also find ways to address current challenges by supporting the treaty body's work and return to the funding formula with slight adjustments of Resolution 68 to 68, namely by endorsing a new Assembly General Resolution where the funding formula should accurately reflect the work needed to implement the 3 pillars of the Chair's common vision. Any workload targets have to be both inclusive of the current backlog and forward-looking. It has accompanied by a formula adjusted to the increase in communications and the proportional allocation of financial and human resources workforce corresponding to the workload across the treaty bodies. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos Paez, for sharing these working items of the committee and doing it so efficiently. Now we will hear from Madam Chamsha, who, in addition to acting as Vice Chair Rapporteur on Communications, will be updating us on the committee's work under the optional protocol. Madam Chamsha, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished ambassadors, dear participants, it is my honor to give you an overview of the activities of the Human Rights Committee, which has been authorized to receive and consider the communications presented by individuals who allege being victims of a violation of one of the rights listed in the Covenant, and this in keeping with the first optional protocol on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Drawing a comparison between the number of cases that have been registered with the overall number of cases that have been adopted over the past 4 years shows that the committee cannot adopt as many cases as are registered with it. In fact, the overall number of cases presented has been, in order, 170 in 2020, with a total of 155 adopted decisions. In 2021, 212 cases with 132 decisions. In 2022, the overall number was 210, and decisions adopted 175. And in 223, there were 268 cases and 163 decisions adopted. The number of cases remaining to be treated, you can see, is on constant increase. Regarding the relationship between the number of cases that have been addressed and the number of cases that have been registered, bearing in mind the request for temporary measures, we see that in 2023, the Secretariat had to deal with 3,600 emails per week. 2,802 communications were received from new authors. Out of a total of 408 cases lodged and submitted to the state parties for their observations, 268 were received by the Human Rights Committee. The numbers of figures and the numbers of registrations in 2023 are the highest we have ever seen in a treaty body, with approximately an average of 34 cases per month, 13 of them with temporary protection measures granted per month. This amounts to a 9% increase vis-a-vis 2022. Now, the cause of these increase in the number of cases is related, among other things, to armed conflict, to the current trend of